Hey guys, in this video we're going to talk a little bit about lenses, the different types of lenses that are available to you, as well as the creative aspects of those lenses. And we're also going to talk a little bit about how do you choose which lens is right for you. So with that said, let's start by talking about the two types of lenses. The two types of lenses include the prime lens and the zoom lens. The difference between those is basically the zoom lens, you can stand in a one position and you can zoom in and out. So I could zoom to, first of all, I could start with a really wide view. I'm seeing the whole city, and then I could stand in the same place and zoom in so I'm focused on a single window. That's a zoom lens. A prime lens, on the other hand, will zoom, but the way that it zooms is I hold the camera up and I walk towards my subject or I walk away from my subject. So that's how you zoom with a prime lens. Now you may think, well, why in the world would I even want a prime lens? Like, I'm lazy and I don't want to have to walk anywhere. The reason why you would want a prime lens maybe versus a zoom lens is the quality, basically. A prime lens has fewer lens elements, pieces of glass that light has to pass through between the front of the lens and where the film plane is at. Because it has fewer lens elements, you're going to have a sharper, cleaner image. The zoom lens, on the other hand, has a lot of glass elements and a lot of interesting things going on with the light between the front and the back of the lens. And because of that, if you want really high quality, you got to pay a lot of money for that, for a high quality zoom lens. And I'll tell you, with lenses, the really, really cheap lenses versus the really expensive lenses, you're going to see a pretty significant difference. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go out and spend $2,000 on a lens. You can get something fairly decent in the mid-range, between $500 and $1,000 at the most. But it will make a difference. If you go with the really cheap lenses, there's definitely a difference. Now, can the average everyday Joe tell the difference between something shot on maybe a $500 lens and a $3,000 lens? Probably not. Are they going to notice a difference between a $150 lens and a $1,000, multiple $1,000 lens? They may see the difference there. So I would say go with something that's in your budget, probably something between $300 and $600, something like that. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about when it comes to lenses are focal lengths. So focal length basically refers to how wide of a view you have to how narrow of a view you have when you're looking through that lens. The lower the number, the wider the view. And the bigger the number, the more narrow the view. So let's talk about these. The first type of lens you see here at the bottom of this is the fisheye lens. The fisheye lens is basically an almost 180-degree view. The view is so wide that you can't even have a rectangular frame. It shows up as a circle. This is great if you're trying to, if you're doing some creative, funky things. A lot of, I see a lot of band shots with the fisheye lens. Other than that, I don't really know what I would use it for, but you may look at it and say, oh, I can think of lots of ways to use the fisheye lens. Fisheye lens is going to range from 8 millimeters up to, a little below 16 millimeters. The next lens focal length is the wide lens, and the wide angle lens, and that's going to range from 16 millimeters to 35 millimeters. With a wide angle lens, you're going to use that when you're trying to capture, a grand landscape, whether that's a cityscape or a landscape, or you just really want a really wide view to see a lot of stuff in your frame. As we move up from the wide angle lens to the normal lens, you're talking in the 35 to 80 millimeter range. A normal lens basically makes things look, well, normal. So this is a great lens for portraits. Why is that? Well, because most people want to look normal. They don't want to look distorted, which we'll talk about in just a minute. A telephoto lens is going to be a lens that's somewhere in between 80 and 1,000 plus millimeters. This is going to be a great lens for photographing something that's really far away that you can't really get close to and fill the frame. So wildlife. Telephoto lenses are great for wildlife because it's kind of hard to get, a few feet away from a bear and take its picture without it getting mad at you and eating you. So telephoto lens is going to be, fantastic for getting a good shot of bear without getting too close and disturbing it, and it's going to give you a more naturalistic look because it's not even aware that you're there. You're far enough away. Same with, documentary photography. You may want to get a picture of people and not have them know that you're around, so they're not, posing to the camera. You want something more natural. Telephoto lens is great for that. Really, if you're doing documentary, a wide angle normal in telephoto is going to be great because you're telling stories. You want to show, the grand cityscape. You want to show people in their element, and then you maybe want to zoom in and get some close-ups of people doing things without even being aware that you're there. So those are the different ranges of lenses: fisheye, wide, normal, and telephoto. Within those ranges of focal lengths, you have macro lenses. You'll have to look at that when you're purchasing your lens to see if it has a macro setting. Sometimes that can cost you a little bit more, sometimes not, depends on the lens quality. But macro allows you to flip a switch and then you can focus significantly closer than you can with just a standard lens. So it's a great tool if you're interested in photographing something really small, whether it's insects or flowers or, whatever. And then last of all, as we talked about, there are different zoom lenses and zoom ranges. You can find zoom lenses that range from, like, a wide angle zoom is going to be a 17 to 35, so you can zoom wide to more wide. There are zoom lenses that span sort of the whole range of things, all the way from wide to telephoto. So that would be something like a 24 to 200 millimeter zoom lens. And then last of all, you have zoom lenses in the telephoto range. So you can zoom from something far away to something even farther away and get a really close shot. So those are the different lens focal lengths. Now I want to talk a little bit about some of the creative qualities of lenses. First of all, we talk about converging lines. A wide-angle lens is going to cause the lines in your photograph to seemingly converge together, whereas a telephoto or a normal lens is going to keep those lines nice and straight. And a lot of that has to do with how close and how far away you can get from the subject that you're photographing and the impact that that has on the lines. But just keep in mind, wide-angle lenses are very often going to converge lines together, and telephoto lenses are going to result in them being parallel with the edge of the frame. Next, I want to talk about compression of space. So a wide-angle lens is going to make the photograph seem like there is an enormous amount of space. This is great for landscapes because, it makes it seem like you could just walk forever. We look at this shot here on the left that was shot with a wide-angle lens, and it looks like the distance from the table in the foreground to the tables in the background is like 35, 40, 50 feet away. The reality, though, is more like what you see in the center where it was shot with a normal lens, that those tables are really only about 20 feet away. And then when you look in that third photograph on the right, the telephoto lens, you can see that it really compresses space. It seems as though if you were sitting on that table in the foreground, you could reach over and grab the coffee of the person in the table in the background there. The next thing to consider is the depth of field. Depth of field basically refers to the range of focus in your image. So a large depth of field is going to be a shot where everything in the foreground all the way to the background is in focus. Narrow depth of field, you're going to have just this small little range of focus. So if we look at the images here, you can see that the depth of field on the left is a large depth of field. This is a wide-angle lens, and you can see with the wide-angle lens that the flowers are in focus, and then the background is just slightly out of focus, but you can still make out that it's a building there. We get into the normal range, and here in the middle, and you can see that our background starts to become more blurry. Our plant is still sharp, but the background starts to get significantly more blurry, especially as you look at the trees. And then in the right, with the telephoto lens, it's really difficult to make out what is going on in the background. So it's got a very, very narrow range of depth of field. All right, and the last thing that I want to talk about when it comes to the creative attributes of lenses is lens distortion. So here's a shot of me back in my younger days playing around with those three types of lenses. On the left, you can see the impacts of lens distortion in a wide angle lens. It makes things that are very close seem really close, and things that are farther away seem a little farther away, which results in a giant forehead, a huge nose, and a really weird looking, well, just head overall. My body looks like it's a little farther away than it should be. In the middle shot, we have a normal lens, the results of a normal lens, making me look as normal as humanly possible. And then on the right, we have the effects of a telephoto lens, where we're getting that compression of space. So it's distorting my face, making it look like my ears are on the same plane as my eyes and my nose. So those are some of the creative attributes of lenses. Those are some of the different types of lenses, and hopefully this gives you a good sense of maybe which lens is right for you. The thing that you need to ask yourself is, what do I want to photograph? If you're saying, well, I really love doing landscapes and cityscapes, telephoto lens, probably not the right thing. Normal lens, probably not. If you say, I'm really into people and I want to do portraits and, that sort of thing, the normal lens and probably the telephoto lens are going to suit you well. And if you're into wildlife or you're into, documentary or whatnot, then you may want a broader range of lens, and especially you're going to want those telephoto lenses. So some things to ask yourself and to do some self-reflection here. What do I want to photograph? And which lens is going to suit me the best? So good luck with that. I know you'll make the right decision now with the base of knowledge that you have with regards to lenses and the creative aspects of those lenses.